Hi, we're Jay and Laura LaFoon. We're authors and speakers, and we travel the country doing our ultimate date nights and weekend conferences in churches, helping couples connect and grow in their marriage. We're super excited to be with you here today to talk about communication skills and conflict resolution.
Jay and I have been married 32 years, and believe it or not, we met on a blind date. 32 years ago, we met on a blind date. No, 33 years ago, we met on a blind date. But 10 days later, he asked me to marry him. So you know what?
Hey, when you know what, you know what.
And here we are 32 years later doing marriage education. So
they said it
we figured it out.
last.
Good job. Not really, we haven't figured it out. We just tolerate each other. But anyway, we are here today.
No, you tolerate me.
We are here today to talk about communication skills and conflict resolution. And it just boggles my mind. You love this person. You're in this thing called marriage. We love each other. We're life mates. We're partners. But we can't communicate. He doesn't hear what I say. He hears something totally different than what I say. We conflict about things we don't really want to conflict about, like toothpaste and toilet paper, but we won't go there. But why? We're married. We love each other. Why can't we communicate? And why do we have so much conflict? Well, we have this because we are a mess. Now, not just we, because we are, but so are you.
Now, and some of you might be going, but wait a minute. We're in love. We haven't had a fight yet. We're not ever going to fight. We communicate really well. And trust me, we've been there. We know. But as life happens, trust us, you're going to have communication issues that if you start working on now, you're going to improve. And you are going to need to learn how to resolve conflict, because you will at some point conflict over something.
So, but here's what we think. Before we get into actually helping you communicate and helping you look at conflict and how can we look at it differently, we want to understand, why do we have this problem? Because we just think we're married, we love each other. Why can't we do this? Well, because we are a mess. And like I said before, not just we are a mess, but you're a mess too. We're individually all a mess. And then you enter this thing called marriage, and now you have a messy marriage. And the reason that we have a messy marriage is because mentally we're a mess. Men and women think very differently. You don't have to be with that person that you're with very long before you realize that you think differently. Men and women's brains are just wired differently. Here's an example. I am a sleeper. Jay likes to get up early in the morning, like, 7 o'clock early. And I don't believe God exists before 8. So I sleep in.
That was a joke, by the way.
Here's what happens. Yes, that was a joke. So here's what happens. Jay, he wakes up and he takes his feet and he flings them out over the side of the bed. And the minute they hit the floor, his brain starts going 1,000,000 miles an hour. And so does his mouth, which is very annoying. But that's just the way we're different. I wake up in the morning slowly. I need to have my first cup of coffee gone before Jay speaks a word, or it's not a pretty picture. We are a mental mess because we think very different mentally. You're also an emotional mess. Here, gentlemen, I'm going to help you here, okay? This is just one for you to keep in your back pocket.
Good tip from Laura. You need to listen to this.
Your wife-to-be is like this phone. She wants to be held. She wants to be touched. She wants to be talked to. But you push the wrong button and you're going to be disconnected. Just keep that in your back pocket.
That's the truth.
And the reason is because we're all a mess emotionally. We're all a mess sexually.
This is a good one.
And the reason we're all a mess sexually is because we're different. We have different desires. Here's what I want you to do. I'm going to give you a definition.
And then I'm going to have
you. Yes, definition of the word cravings. Cravings is a great or eager desire or yearning. A great or eager desire to yearn. Now, here's what I want you to do. I want you to shut your eyes. Don't look at each other, but shut your eyes and picture in your mind something that you crave. Picture in your mind something that you crave. Okay, now you can open your eyes. Ma'am,
ladies,
did you picture some kind of chocolate or food item? Probably. Gentlemen, did you picture your wife? We're different. And that's why we're a mess in this area. And we're also a mess spiritually.
We are a mess spiritually. Obviously, the scripture's clear. All have fallen and all have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. It's clear. We're a mess spiritually. And if we understand that we're a mess in these ways, and some of us are messier in one way or the other, but if we all understand that we're a mess, it becomes easier to give grace and to really understand that no one's ever going to be perfect. You see, the Bible talks about 2 mysteries, and only 2. Christ in the church and marriage. And if God made marriage a mystery, none of us are ever completely going to figure it out. But the idea in marriage is to walk this journey called marriage with your partner, the ups, the downs, the twists, the turns, through the bumpy roads, and to catch glimpses of what it's really supposed to be all about. See, that's what I think God does. Even though we're a mess, He gives us glimpses of what marriage is supposed to be about, and it's those that we walk towards together. So just be honest right now. We're going to ask you to press the pause button and talk about how maybe we're a little messy mentally, emotionally, sexually, and spiritually. We'll be right back. Okay, so we're all a mess. We can admit it. Hopefully you were able to admit it to each other. Just get your cards out on the table. We're not all perfect. We're not all that in a bag of chips. And so because we're not perfect, because we're a mess, we're going to conflict. We're going to be challenged and have challenges that are going to cause disagreements, arguments. This is a real part of marriage, and learning to walk through this is important. Now, I'm going to tell you the big three that you're going to argue about. These are the big three. There's a lot of little ones, but the big three. Money, sex, family. Those are the big three. Yeah, you might argue about which movie to go to or where to eat dinner, but these are the ones that are going to cause the biggest conflict. So let's review them. Money. Whether you have money or you don't have money, you're going to have money issues. Because if you don't have money, obviously it's a stress. It's a strain. How are we going to pay our bills? And if you do have money, it's a stress because she's going to want to spend it one way and I'm going to want to spend it another. And so we're going to argue about what to spend the money on. So there's one. Sex. Is this a big issue in marriage?
No.
Because no matter who you are, you have different desires sexually, and you have different appetites sexually. In 4 out of 5 marriages, the man has a stronger sex drive than the woman. In 1 out of 5 marriages, the woman has the higher sex drive than the man. So either way, you're going to conflict about this because, as in our marriage, I'm a lot hungrier than Laura is when it comes to having sex with each other. Actually, making love, let's be honest. And then finally, family. This one can be enormous because you're coming from 2 different backgrounds. You might have grown up in the same town. You might have gone to school together your whole life, but you're still coming from 2 different families who did things 2 different ways. So you're going to conflict about family issues and boundaries.
Yes, and these are the big 3 because you do have difficulty. We have difficulty communicating about money. For us, when we got married, or before we got married, actually, it was shortly after our blind date, and Jay realized that I like to spend money, and I wasn't very good at keeping track of where I was spending the money. I had a really good job. I had a checking account, and some of you may not remember what a check is.
For those of you under 30, a
right.
check is a piece of paper the bank used to give us that we would write on and pay our bills with.
But so I had written 14 checks, not recorded any of them. I just thought that money kept coming and kept coming. So obviously I had bounced 14 checks is what I meant. I bounced 14 checks. So we had a discussion about it. Wasn't easy. It wasn't easy for me to admit that I didn't really know what I was doing when it came to a budget or keeping track of money. It was hard to communicate about it. I knew there was going to be conflict, but I knew that we could talk through it. And so part of my communicating was having to admit that I had a problem. Part of his communicating was having to say, I can help you with that. And so we have really worked, and it hasn't been perfect through our entire marriage. It's something that we continue to revisit because I've gotten better, but I still make mistakes. And it's really hard to communicate and to admit that. So that's money.
That's sex.
That area is hard to communicate about, and there's going to be conflict that you're going to have to learn to communicate about so you can resolve it. And then last but certainly not least, you're going to fight about family. You're going to conflict about family. And this is where it's really important to establish the boundaries that you 2 agree on. You have to communicate about them because those boundaries are going to get pushed.
Especially when children come along.
Oh yeah, I could go story after story after story, but we won't. But when you said children came along, but minutes, 10, 12, 15 years ago, I don't know how long it was, Jay's folks moved to our town. Now, a little backstory here. You need to understand Jay's like the golden child in his family. Firstborn son, firstborn grandson, has always been told he can do anything perfectly. He's just wonderful. So this is what I married. So
isn't she lucky?
So 15 years ago, his parents moved 2 miles from us, which was wonderful for what we do because they could take care of our kids. It wasn't wonderful that for the first probably 6 months that his family lived 2 miles from us, his mother expected us to have every dinner together. It was wonderful in one part that I didn't have to cook. So, hey, that was wonderful. But it was like, seriously, we need our own time. We need our own family time. So it was a hard conversation to have
with my
between,
folks.
well, first it was hard between us.
True.
Only because it was his family. He got it. He understood it. But then as a team, having to go set that boundary with his family. Now, the boundary that we've set, we've communicated. Yes, were there feelings hurt? Yes, there's going to be feelings hurt. But we stuck to our guns because we had decided together this is what we're going to be about. Were. And so now we just have every Sunday dinner together. That's just a family tradition. It's just what we do. But it was a boundary we had to set. And yes, it was not easy to communicate about, but it had to be communicated about, and we resolved the conflict that way.
So hit the pause button right now, if you would, and just some honest conversation between the two of you. Here are the big three: money, sex, and family. And what do we think we're going to conflict about? What are some of the red flags that maybe are already in your life right now? They're like, yeah, that could be an issue for us, so that you can start that dialogue now about those tough issues. We'll see you in a few. Welcome back. Hope you had some really good discussion about the big three that we conflict over. And we're going to turn the corner now and talk about one of the books that we wrote. We surveyed over 1,000 married people and asked them, what do you need to hear from your spouse? And we got 4 very distinct answers. 4 things that every husband needs to hear from his wife, and 4 things that every wife needs to hear from her husband. So we're going to walk through those and see which one strikes you as something you really need to hear from your soon-to-be spouse.
So the first phrase that a man needs to hear from the woman is, I am proud of you. And this is that I'm proud of the way you're taking care of this family. I'm proud of the way you go to work every day, even though I know you hate your job. I'm proud of the way you help me take care of the kids. This is the present day, this, because we're going to talk about the future here in a few minutes. So I want to really focus on, I'm proud of you deals with the here and now, what's happening right now.
And this is going to be no surprise, but every woman needs to hear, I love you. I love you. There's not a woman on the planet that says, oh, he says I love you way too much. It's I love you, I love you, I love you. And we need to say it in a lot of different ways, not only with the words, but with our actions and how we touch her and caress her, how we speak to her. All these different ways that we can say I love you to our wives by the actions that we take.
So that's the first. I'm proud of you.
And I love you.
I love you. So now the second phrase is I want you. Now here's the key difference, okay? I'll give you an illustration. Years ago, we were sitting in a chair. We have this 2-person chair in our house. It's like directly in line with the TV, of course. And so we were sitting there watching TV, and Jay kind of started putting his arm around me and rubbing my shoulder. Then he kind of started rubbing my leg. Then he leaned in and he goes, so, are you feeling frisky? And my reply was, sure, I'm willing. Well, he yanked his hands away from me and said, I don't want you to be willing. I want you to want to. Like, well, I thought that's what I was saying. He said, no, here is the difference.
Big difference.
I'm willing to take out the trash. I'm willing to wash the car. I'm even willing to eat a salad for dinner. But I want to play golf. I want to watch ESPN, and I want to have a steak for dinner. There's a difference between saying I'm willing and I want you or I want to. Here's what, ladies, you need to understand. When you say I'm willing, what you're communicating to your husband is obligation. Willing to take one for the team if I have to. But when you say I want you, I want to, what you're communicating to your man is you are my priority. You're communicating priority. So I want you is the second phrase.
And sexually speaking, gentlemen, your wife needs to hear from you, I desire you. And this is very different than I want you. I desire you is encapsulating all of her. That you don't want her just for your ability to have sex together, but that you want her emotions, you want her personality, you want all of her, and you desire that because it is the complete package. And when she hears this, and she knows this, she understands this, that's when she is more freely, in her own heart and mind, ready to give herself up for you. If all she thinks you want is sex, it's not going to happen. But if she knows that you desire her entire being, then she will respond.
So then the third phrase, ladies, that our husbands need to hear from us is, I need blank from you. You get to fill in the blank. I need blank from you. This is a fact, whether we like it or not. Men are not mind readers, and they don't get subtle hint and innuendo. So we have to be very clear about what we need from them. Here's an illustration. When we have dinner, he's in charge of cleaning it. Like, he and the kids were always involved with bringing everything into the kitchen. I cleaned up the kitchen. I washed the dishes. I didn't want anybody in my kitchen. I wanted to take care of it. But when it was done, I would take the trash can out from underneath the sink, stick it in the middle of the kitchen, and say these words, Jay, the trash is full. And he would respond,
yep, it sure is.
Now, you and I, ladies, we know what I was saying. Take out the trash, please.
Nope.
But those were not the words I used.
Nope, she didn't.
So we have to be
She
very
never said those words.
clear. We have to be very clear with what we need. So I need blank from you.
Right. What she stated was a fact, and I agreed with the fact. And then I just walked on into the other room and watched ESPN. Anyway, so we need to hear, I need blank from you. Clear and concise communication, ladies. And gentlemen, your wife needs to hear, I respect you. I respect you. We really believe that men and women both need love and respect. The respect a woman needs just looks different than that of a man. I'm going to give you a perfect example. When my son was 13 years old, he was kind of sowing his wild oats, pushing the edge, pushing the border. And Laura grew up in the South, so very prim and proper Southern woman. You don't wear a hat in her house. That's just the way it is. When you walk in the house, you take off the hat. And I vividly remember one day my son walking in and not taking off his hat. And he and his mother having a very, very heated discussion. And I simply had to walk up to him. And I'm not a violent man at all. But I stuck my finger in his chest. And I said, young man, you will show my wife respect. And that's what she needs to know. That you will have her back, that you will protect her, that you will show her respect that she deserves. And again, the Bible talks about it like fine china, that we will treat her like fine china. And when we do, we show her that respect.
So the last phrase, ladies, that we need to speak into the life of our husbands is, I believe in you. Now, this is different than I'm proud of you. I'm proud of you deals with the present day. I believe in you deals with his dreams and where he wants to be, what he still hasn't gotten to do. And saying I believe in you says I'm willing to go this journey with you. Wherever you have dreams and aspirations to go, I'm willing to go with you and sacrifice whatever it might be. Because here's what we need to understand, ladies. I didn't understand this, so I want to make sure that you do. We have the power to empower the man in our lives to be everything he was created to be and to do everything he was created to do by saying those words, I believe in you. Now, it's not actually speak that word out loud, I believe in you. It's more of
support. What
are your dreams? What is it you still want to do? Let's make a plan to make that happen, and then stand by that plan no matter what may come along and mess it up a little bit, but you're willing to go forth and walk beside him as he sees his dreams.
So the last phrase, gentlemen, that your wife needs to hear from you is, I cherish you. Now, I have never heard a man in my lifetime say, I cherish this. Okay, it's just not a man word, but it's a huge word for the ladies. And what I cherish you means, we're going to go back to that illustration where Laura said, I want it all. That's what it means to cherish your wife. When you love, when you desire, and when you respect her all at the same time is when she feels cherished. And that is such a special feeling for a woman because it touches her on so many levels, and it will really take your relationship to a new level. So we're going to, again, ask you to press the pause button and talk about these phrases, the 4 phrases every man needs to hear from his wife, and the 4 phrases every wife needs to hear from her husband. Which ones really stick out for you? Well, I hope you've had some great conversation about the 4 phrases that we need to hear from each other. Now we're going to give you some practical tools, some practical tips. And some of this is going to be in information format. And gentlemen, you need to understand this before you start trying to communicate with your wife. That your wife feels all the time. She has a feeling for everything. She has a feeling for what she's drinking. She has a feeling for what she's wearing. She has a feeling for how her makeup looks. She feels all the time. Ladies, you need to understand this. When your man does feel, which isn't very often, he feels more deeply. I'll give you a perfect illustration. You go to any pro football game in the country and you will see men painted, dressed up, craziness, because they feel very passionately about their football team. You don't see many women doing that because it's just not something she's going to do. So when women feel all the time, guys, and when men feel, they feel more deeply. So now how is this important when talking to the opposite sex?
I want to interject something here before you go there, because ladies, that was a very practical information for how men need to understand women. Here's some practical information, ladies, for how we need to understand men. What happens when you ask your man this question? What are you thinking about? The answer is nothing. And as a woman, we go, that's impossible. You have to be thinking about something, because our brains are going all the time. It's, nothing, not thinking about nothing. This is true science proven. Ladies, there's a part of a man's brain where they can go, where they can think about nothing. Jay calls it his happy place. But you need to understand that when he says, I'm not thinking about anything, he's not trying to diss the question. He's not trying to not give you information about what he's really thinking about. They have the ability to think about nothing. That's just a little bit of information you're going to want to know as you venture into this thing called marriage with the man in your life.
Yes, and when talking to your spouse, you need to understand that we talk about different things, okay? Gentlemen, your wife will talk about people and feelings. Primarily those 2 things, people and feelings. And ladies, your husband will primarily talk about facts and activities. So that is why when I come home from golf and she says, how was your golf game? I will tell her all the facts of every shot that I've taken.
All 18 holes.
That's right. And that's why...
Many times he swings the club.
That's why when Laura comes home from lunch with her girlfriends and I say, what did you talk about? We hear all the gossip from the town, okay? I mean, it's just they talk about the people. And so you need to learn to, one of the key things in conflict resolution is to learn...
in communication.
Right, is to learn to care about what your spouse cares about. And when I would start talking about my golf game, Laura's eyes would glaze over. But now she realizes that's important to me, so she tries to listen better. Same thing when she's talking about, can you believe what so-and-so did to so-and-so? I can't believe what so-and-so did to so-and-so. I need to understand that that's important to her, and so it needs to be important to me. So that's kind of some information as you remember those things.
Tell the pheasant story.
I went pheasant hunting in South Dakota. Love pheasant hunting. It's a blast. It's a lot of fun. Pheasant hunting in South Dakota. And I get home, and Laura's like, well, tell me all about it. I'm like, well, there's dogs. The birds fly up. Boom, we kill them, She goes, well, how did it feel? I'm like, what do you mean, how did it feel? I was killing things. It felt great.
I also asked what the other men were wearing.
What were the men wearing? I'm like, hunter orange. So you got to learn to care about what your spouse cares about. Get into the conversation by asking her how she's feeling.
Yeah, because when Jay asks me, what do you think about this? I go,
a million different things.
I'm not sure, because I've got so much thinking. It's my brain, a woman's brain goes like this. But when he asks me, how do you feel about this? I can tap right into that very quickly. And so understanding that thinking, feeling, and using those words when you ask questions and talk about the day and the events of the day and whatever. So here's another very helpful tip, at least it was for us in conflict resolution, is using these 2 phrases. Do you know how this makes me feel? When you say this, when you do this, whatever the situation is, but saying, do you know how this makes me feel? Because a man's going to go, no, I have no clue. Well, then you can say, well, here's how it makes me feel. When you use that tone of voice, it makes me feel stupid, insignificant, whatever. And he goes, well, that's not what I meant. I know that, but that's how it makes me feel, because a woman feels. And so using that phrase, do you know how that makes me feel?
And there's only one of 2 answers to that question. Well, yes, I know how it makes you feel. Well, then you've married a jerk. Or number two, no, I don't know how it makes me feel. And that opens up the dialogue, how it makes you feel. And then that opens up the dialogue, which is great. And guys, a great phrase for you to start resolving some conflict is to say to your wife, help me understand. When it comes to, let's give a particular, help me understand why you needed to spend $100 on that dress when we were going to use that $100 on vacation. And then be quiet and let her explain that, she got a promotion at work. They were giving her an award for being the absolute best person in the world, and she needed a new dress, okay? So do you know how this makes me feel? And help me understand. These are powerful phrases that can help you resolve conflict. So do us a favor right now, press pause. And as you think about talking to your spouse, think about the language that you use and maybe share with each other how you can improve the language that you use in order to reduce conflict. We'll see you in a few.
So we really hope you're having some great discussion and practicing some of those communication skills and learning how to resolve conflict in the relationship. Because the sooner you can figure that out, or at least practice it and practice some of these practical tips that we're giving you, it's going to make communicating a lot easier as you progress down the road and get older, and all you hear now is, what? What'd you say? What?
That's our biggest arguments now. What? What?
Well, what we want to give you now is what we truly believe. If you could just put one habit
into place
into your marriage, it would be this, and it would benefit your communication skills, and it'll help lessen conflict. And here's that one habit. Set aside 15 minutes a day for uninterrupted conversation between the two of you. And
no TV, no phone,
no devices, but sitting down, maybe it's over a cup of coffee, maybe it's over dinner or lunch,
or breakfast,
or just sitting on the couch, but setting aside that time every day to just eyeball to eyeball, have some conversation, maybe asking about your day. How was it? And it'll spur some of that. Maybe it's planning for your next vacation, or what is it that you want to do? And here's what I'm going to tell you: as you're not married,
uninterrupted is so important, guys. Sorry, it's very important.
As you're entering into this thing called marriage, if you can develop this habit before the kids come along, it will be easy to keep it when the kids come along, because those are going to be your biggest distraction, and your biggest obstacle to having this 15 minutes of uninterrupted conversation is going to be the kids.
Now, why it's important? It's important because it keeps you on the same page as a couple, okay? We know what's going on in our lives, so we don't go, you didn't tell me that, you didn't tell me that. Number two, it allows you to discuss maybe some of the touchy issues before they get really touchy issues. And number three, guys, you need to understand this. For your wife, conversation is like play. It's the way God wired her. She feels close to you when she feels like you are listening to her.
So now what we want you to do is we want you to push that pause button and look at your everyday, look at your week, set aside, look and say, here's when we can put that 15 minutes into our schedule. We've got jobs, we've got activities that we do, but this needs to be a priority. So say every morning, every afternoon, every evening when we're having dinner, we're going to go to coffee, putting that in, but talking to each other and saying, here's when we can do it, and here we are going to do it. So push pause and talk about that right now. So we really hope that you figured out when you can put that 15 minutes of uninterrupted conversation into your schedule. Now what we want to do is we want to give you a very practical picture of how you can communicate and resolve conflict.
Obviously Scripture is full of great, great wisdom. And probably one of the best pieces of wisdom that's countercultural, it's counterintuitive to us as human beings, and it's countercultural, is the idea of humility and staying humble. And honestly, clear communication between husband and wife and solving conflicts in a productive way begins with you each being humble and being surrendered and to that idea of humbleness. So if you would, take and put your hands like this together, and then take that middle knuckle and bring it down so it's just knuckle to knuckle. And those middle fingers represent you and your future spouse in a very humbled position. And the other fingers represent relationships in your life. Your thumbs represent your parents. You were meant to separate from your parents. Your index fingers are your siblings. You were meant to separate from your siblings. And your pinky finger are your kids. You were meant to separate from your kids. Although they come back, they just keep coming back. But that ring finger, that represents your marriage. Go ahead. You can't do it. No matter how hard you try, as long as you stay humble, you will stay connected. Because it is in humility that God allows His Spirit to draw you closer. It's in humility that God allows His Spirit to help keep those communication lines open. And it's in humility where conflict isn't a bad thing when we know how to resolve it and honestly give the glory to God that we've gotten through this next challenge. Well, we're Jay and Laura Laffoon, and there's nothing we would like more than to see your marriage flourish and thrive. So we hope we've given you some helpful tips when it comes to communication and conflict resolution.